following presentation will cover the ethical issue of defrauding investors by Nikola Corporation. We will be covering the summary of the issue, what we are trying to accomplish, the key stakeholders, what our proposed solution is, and then what the next steps are for Nikola. So, set to tackle the growing industry of heavy-duty EVs or electric vehicles, specifically related to semi-trucks, Nikola Corporation was charged with defrauding their investors. The SEC found that they were misleading investors in many aspects of the company's developments in order to inflate their share price. This included technological advancements for new products. So, for example, before they even had any product ready to go for the market, they were implying to their investors that they had multiple products ready to go for production, when in fact they did not. They were inflating their production capabilities, they were inflating their number of truck reservations and orders, and other fraudulent activities, all in order to inflate their share price. And furthermore, they agreed to pay a settlement to the investors that they deceived.
So what are we trying to accomplish? Our team is assessing how Nikola can recover from their defrauding scandal. We're looking at what steps the brand can take to rebuild a reputation after this incident. So if Nikola wants to move forward as a company, they're going to need to gain trust with their partners. They're going to have to create new relationships with other brands and also their consumers. And they need to do that by addressing the defrauding scandal publicly. It's important that the company assesses the impact they have had on their stakeholders and what impact they're going to have on them in the future. And they need to address their needs directly. First, let's take a look at who those stakeholders are.
All right, so now we're going to be looking at Nikola's primary decision maker and their key stakeholders. As we learned earlier in the quarter, a company's CEO sets the tone for the whole company. Employees, shareholders, consumers, and communities look to the CEO for answers. Within the company, the CEO also has the responsibility of managing overall business operations. Considering those things, Mark Russell, Nikola's current CEO, is the primary decision maker. Now on to Nikola's key stakeholders. We have identified four major ones: employees, shareholders, partnering companies, and the SEC, or government. I'm briefly going to touch on each one and discuss how they're affected by the fraud scandal. So first off, employees. Employees have huge stakes in the company. Their livelihoods are affected by Nikola's business decisions. If Nikola is unable to rebuild their reputation, then they may need to downsize and lay off some employees in order to decrease their expenses. On to shareholders. Shareholders also have monetary stakes in the company. When a business performs well, shareholders might receive dividends or see an increase in the value of their stock. But the opposite can also be true, which is what shareholders of Nikola saw in 2020 when they were having issues with their fraud scandal. Next is partnering companies. Partnering companies of Nikola are General Motors, Bosch, and ENGS Commercial Finance. Partnering companies also have stakes in Nikola's performance. Looking at General Motors as an example, they partnered with Nikola a few years ago and received an 11% share of the company in exchange for manufacturing one of Nikola's trucks. Nikola benefited by securing a manufacturer, but also benefited because General Motors is a trusted and credible company, and Nikola wasn't very well known at the time, and they didn't actually have any revenues yet. So they were lacking credibility, and General Motors helped them get that. When it came out that Nikola had lied about their business, General Motors had to quickly work to recover their own image and credibility to consumers and their own customers. Moving on to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, they're responsible for holding companies like Nikola accountable if fraud is detected. because of the fraud issue with Nikola and how it had become so public, the SEC's reputation and people's trust in the government was at stake because it could have been hugely affected if the SEC failed to appropriately respond to Nikola's issues. So now that we have discussed our 4 key stakeholders, we are going to move on to Hannah to discuss our solution.
So what exactly is our proposed solution and recommendations? For starters, it's important that Nikola clears their name by paying the penalty. Clearing the case will begin the work of rebuilding Nikola's reputation with its stakeholders. Our proposed solution is to begin partnering with smaller tech companies to help rebuild our reputation. Working with smaller companies will help us by building trust and transparency with them. Once we build a solid foundation for Nikola's reputation, we will begin climbing our way up the ladder to work with larger ones. I think it would be wise to meet with key stakeholders to build this trust. It will benefit them and the company. Mark Russell, the new CEO and owner, has the tough job of trying to restore what was lost. The short-term consequences for him are possible loss in the value of shares. Long-term, if the business tanks, he could ultimately lose his job. This could be considered an unintended consequence as he is taking over for the previous CEO. For individual shareholders like Daniel Tran, there was a short-term consequence of the value of their shares decreasing. A long-term consequence could be that they lose most or all of their money. As I mentioned earlier, I think it would be wise for Nikola to begin hosting small meetings with their stakeholders to build trust with the brand. They could meet to talk about their future goals and where they plan to take the company moving forward. Meeting with important stakeholders like the founder, Trevor Milton, this could begin the process of building the reputation behind the scenes. It is said to be true that Trevor Milton had a large say in internal and public issues. If he could begin to build trust by influencing other stakeholders to invest with Nikola again, this would be amazing for the company. Also, if there's a way that they could be included in the Advanced Clean Truck Expo, this would allow the company to get some more positive exposure. Next, we'll talk about the cost-benefit analysis of our solution. Is it financially worth it for Nikola Corporation to make these plans a reality? And how will it benefit them? This cost is as low as possible considering the cost of $125 million to settle the case. There is a cost of decrease in customer satisfaction, and working with smaller companies could mean missing out on working with larger ones, although I think that's unlikely. The direct benefits would be increased revenue and shares from new or returning customers. This would increase trust from stakeholders and improve employee morale. Most importantly, it keeps the business afloat. This is something they have to do to stay in business. This still delivers the chance for Nikola to get back on its 2 feet. Partnering with small tech businesses would be cost efficient. All in all, it is worth it for the company to follow through with these plans. And now I will pass it off to Daniel as he answers what the next steps are for the company.
Hello, my name is Daniel. Today I'm going to be discussing some of the steps and actions Nikolai can take to plan for the future of their stakeholders. One of the steps they can take is to address and take responsibility for the fake Nutmilk truck. This can help companies know that they're acknowledging the unethical practices and are also willing to make a change. Starting with this new foundation, they can take steps to outreach to newer companies and startups. These companies are vital to helping them build trust, a strong relationship, and strong financial backings for the company. As we know, on the slide, we can see that there are some small EV companies in the present day, such as Fisker and Rivian. These are just smaller scale companies in the EV space right now that just need to produce more volume to be more competitive in the US market. There are also international companies that we can see that Nikola can partner with. Some of these companies, such as NIO, Li, and Xpeng, are strong EV companies in China. These companies also have been IPO in the US stock markets and currently are trading at a low value due to a bearish market. But besides that, we can look at the partnerships with the international companies can be vital for these for Nikolai, because they can expand and build a stronger reputation. Nikolai can also take a different route and try to partner with smaller startup companies for the components such as batteries. I feel like startup companies such as Dot, Gnome, and Lithium Works can help build and back the components of Nikolai and create a strong relationship and trust for the company. Furthermore, Nikolai can also do like annual audits on their own company to hold themselves accountable. I feel like doing annual audits for the company can show the public that they're keeping themselves accountable is a good step for them to build long-term success for the company itself. And to conclude, I believe that we have to look at all the costs and benefits for our stakeholders at Nikolai. For the key stakeholders, needing to make a critical decision to help build the company from the ground up, I feel like building a company from ground up will keep the company ethical, yet have a strong standing of financial success for the future. Thank you, guys.